Who has a problem with South Park? Who doesn't like it?
The funniest shows, if not the funniest of all time.
You eat fish sticks.
Are you a gay fish?
Do you let him watch South Park?
No, absolutely not.
TV's fault, parents' fault.
Oh my god.
It's kind of like saying the refrigerator in that kitchen is the thing that's making me fat.
Bob Schneider is a stapler.
A stapler.
Story of 4 charming boys.
Adult off-color humor.
The story of 3.
I think South Park is really already starting to lose some of its steam.
South Park, the 25th season premieres.
South Park became an instant sensation and took the world by storm, garnering fans from all over the world, which is quite ironic as Comedy Central nearly pulled the plug on the show after a poor focus group screening for the premiere episode, with many of the general public wanting it taken off the air due to its offensive nature, including Matt and Trey, who joined the bandwagon that South Park should be banned to promote the show.
Another reason why South Park should be banned.
Reason number 459. When played backwards, Kenny's dialogue is satanic.
Listen carefully.
I am Satan. Love me.
But luckily, Comedy Central took a risk after the poor reception from the screening, and it paid off. And the network kept renewing the show for more and more episodes, with season 2 having 18, 3 and 4 having 17, but it wasn't until they reached season 5 they found their real groove of how to make the episodes in the quickest time frame, and adopted the 6 days to air model. Season 5 up until 15 consisted of 14 episodes each, with the first 7 episodes airing in March and the second half of the season releasing in October. But this doesn't mean it's always been a smooth run with the creators making the show in 6 days. It's clearly going to come with its struggles, with Trey and Matt sometimes barely making the deadline the episode is due to air.
I mean, the worst thing ever was when we did it was the last show of the season and it was about, was it the hockey one or something, or a baseball one, or it was a sports one? And Trey literally came in and laid on the floor for the whole meeting. He was like, I got nothing. It's the last show. And that's horrible. That's like terrifying for me.
And strangely, it is usually the final episode in the run they have the hardest time working on. One example that springs to mind is the episode Woodland Critter Christmas, with the creators creating a near perfect run. Season 8, they just needed to get over one small hurdle, the final show of the run, and they couldn't think of anything and ran into a creative block. From Thursday through to Saturday, they had no ideas and the show was scheduled to air Wednesday. Trey decided to run with an idea, Critter Christmas, as they had nothing else to work with. But what really sold them on this concept was, well, let Matt tell you.
The thing that made us go, that's it, was Blood Orgy.
Right.
This has been the closest South Park has been to missing a deadline, but somehow they managed to pull it off, with Trey even saying,
we're gonna pull this off. Like, the pages are in, animation's going pretty good, we're gonna get a show done, it's gonna be funny. And I remember just roaring in my car. I roared like a lion. I didn't mean to, it just came out of me. And I was just sitting there behind the wheel going, Rah!
The reason I mention this is because it shows how much pride they have in their work, and they realize there is no acceptable excuse for them to ever miss a deadline after managing to pull off this episode. This aired in season 8, and they have managed to keep this model going all this time. This has been South Park's formula of making episodes, creating 14 episodes in total each year, managing to pull it off by the skin of their teeth. Up until season 17, where the episodes were reduced to 10. But you can start to see cracks along the way of what led to the episodes being cut down quite significantly. The show's depressing turning point. In the documentary 6 Days to Air, it was the audience's first real glimpse into the South Park Studios HQ. The documentary showed the filming process for the premiere episode of season 15, The Human Centipede, documenting the writers pitching potential story ideas to the animators going off and storyboarding the episode, and even focuses on Trey writing the finalized script by himself, with him even quoting this part he hates.
I hate writing so much because the writing part of it is actually so like lonely and sad, you know.
Which could just be a flippant comment and to not look too far into it. But this season in particular didn't look an enjoyable process to him anymore, even with one part in the documentary saying to the camera it's the worst episode they've done. You could start to see the strain and toll making these episodes was getting to. It's no surprise we got an episode in the same season this documentary was filmed called You're Getting Old, where Randy has a breakdown in front of Sharon.
Because I'm unhappy, okay? I've been unhappy for a long time.
Many people thought when the episode You're Getting Old aired, Park was talking directly to the audience to make them emphasize with what South Park has become.
I don't know if I've changed or you have. I just feel like I might not have a whole lot of time left and I want to enjoy it.
And I remember at the time there were a lot of fans worried what the outcome may be, as this episode ended on a cliffhanger, believing this could be the end of South Park. But around the same time, this is when fans were being more vocal that the show isn't the same as it used to be. But once given a warning by the creators, it seemed like everyone changed their tune. We'd have South Park forums saying South Park isn't the same as it used to be, and after the episode aired, people reminiscing on why they love South Park and don't want it to end. It was quite funny to see. But after seeing the full episode, the South Park Studios team confronted Matt and Trey, checking if everything was okay, with them even laughing it off, saying, yeah, we're fine. But I still think there is truth in what Parker is saying here. Maybe he was just not trying to show any hint of vulnerability to keep the South Park Studios machine functioning, because at the end of the day, they still need to make a show, and this is a business. I do find it hard to grasp how that conversation would just come out of the blue between Randy and Sharon. Something had to have been going on at South Park Studios. Now I know Matt and Trey have shrugged this off in their commentary as well, but something about it just doesn't seem right to me. It wasn't soon after this unexpected moment by Randy and the show that new season orders would consist of 10 episodes instead of 14, just 2 years after You're Getting Old aired. Which you could say is just a coincidence, but I think that episode was a huge turning point for the series, and it's crazy to think that was over 10 years ago and people were feeling old then. Oh god. We don't know what goes on behind closed doors at Comedy Central, but my guess would be the creators were becoming exhausted trying new ways to keep the show fresh and a passion project to them after doing it for so long, with Sharon even saying,
every week it's kind of the same story in a different way, but it just keeps getting more and more ridiculous.
Which may be the reason why they experimented with serialization later on. And we know how fed up they got with The Simpsons doing episode plots before them. The creators rarely publicly say it, but you can tell how much they love the show, with Trey Parker even saying South Park is his baby. And maybe he was starting to think if they didn't mix up the show soon, it may outstay its welcome, due to the feedback from the audience. And a lot of fans also say, I wish they would go back to making 18 episode seasons. But they never made 18 episode seasons. Season 2 had 18 episodes, but this is also the season where different writers were involved, whereas in the current South Park, Trey Parker writes all the scripts alone. The reason South Park has outlasted its animation competitors is because it's still the brains behind the show on the very first day in the writer's room, creating the show, rather than getting to a certain level of notoriety and someone else taking the reins. And you have to respect Trey Parker and Matt Stone for that. Serialized episodes. We had brief moments of more connected storylines throughout the series, going as far back as season 3, having a whole narrative centered around a meteor shower and showing each of the boys' stories on the same night, even verging into more ambitious ideas with the trilogies such as Imagination Land and the Game of Thrones parody. For season 19, they took a light serialization approach, having a connected story of Randy being Lord and PC Principal, a new character, being the principal of South Park Elementary on a quest to eliminate ads, which was received pretty well with fans and gave Matt and Trey the confidence to make a whole serialized season, Season 20. Season 20 was a nightmare and one of the hardest seasons they had to do. The reason being as it was entirely serialization. The subject matter for Season 20 was actually a side project they were working on about a troll that says the worst stuff imaginable online.
But during the day was like a totally nice family man who was hiding his identity as an internet troll.
Too many people are comfortable saying whatever they want behind a keyboard, especially the ones that have a football player or a car as their profile picture. But if their identity was found out, they would be sweating buckets. Don't be fooled, they aren't a real car. How do I know this? Because cars can't swear. Ain't that right, Lightning McQueen?
Back off, jack off!
Moving on. But anyway, the creators wanted to tackle this for a whole season and connect this idea to South Park. This ended up being the main story for Season 20, which also tied in with the election going on at the time between Trump and Hillary. A storyline they had to focus on as one of their characters, Mr. Garrison, was parodying Trump at the time. But unfortunately, the Trump storyline interfered with the other storylines the writers had planned for the season, giving them no room to breathe, as they had to play along with the real-time election going on. Hillary was predicted to win at the time, and the creators based the second half of the season around this narrative. Since Trump became president, they had to frantically rewrite and piece all these new ideas together, meaning they had to scrap the true story they wanted to tell for the season, about men versus women being at odds with each other, and Mr. Garrison failing to become president and returning to South Park Elementary after making a fool out of himself, which they admit due to the outcome of the election that the season was a nightmare. They had to dramatically change the last 3 episodes after the election results while losing their minds in the process. Matt Stone even quotes,
"It was like definitely the hardest season physically and just mentally to figure out how to make this stuff funny."
A lot of people state this season killed South Park, but in my opinion, if this wasn't the creators' true vision for the series, you don't really have a valid argument. as a lot of ideas didn't have the opportunity to get momentum and were stuck following this Trump narrative due to real world events. And bizarrely, after this season, they never attempted to make another season a serialized way again, even though initially I'm guessing they thought this would be an easier way of writing the show, having one overarching story rather than focusing on completely new plots each week, as we know how stressful Trey Parker gets when writing for this show. I mean, just look at his writing credits, can you blame him? And we don't know what happens at South Park. They could have just been getting seriously burnt out and needed to make a dramatic change to the show to want to continue making it. But with the path the season took next, it wouldn't surprise me. Tegrity Farms. Now this is arguably the biggest complaint people have with the new season, moving away from the core four who are really the stars of the show and the characters the fans have come to know and love, venturing more into more Randy focused storylines and even changed the intro to Tegrity Farms. Randy is a great character, don't get me wrong, but what makes Randy great is him being sprinkled in small doses throughout the season, such as with him fighting Bat Dad, cock magic, bouncing on testicles. But when you have every episode about him, you get desensitized to his shenanigans and it becomes a bit overkill. It's not just him randomly showing up and playing heroin hero, it's him appearing in every episode on a farm smoking weed for a whole season. I think Matt and Trey kinda used this as a shortcut to rely on Randy more, as that's the character they can truly relate to now and is easier to write for. They identify with the adults more rather than the kids, unlike Shimon. It seems like this introduction of a new location made it easier for them to write stories around, as had a whole new area to explore rather than just South Park the town, which they may have struggled on how to keep the town fresh. But with this also comes a lot less adventures focusing on the boys just getting up to some over the top situations, as the Marshalls have moved far away from South Park and Stan's friends do not come to visit. I do think this was a strange choice for where they wanted to take the series, as Trey even went against his word on what he thinks are the best South Park episodes, just boys being boys.
I like the shows like this that are kind of like just kind of cute, just boys being boys and just kind of kid-like. Those are my favorite ones.
And I really can only justify why he would make this change is to make it easier and more relatable to him when scripting the episode, using Tegrity Farms as a safety net they can fall back on if the plot doesn't come together, even if it makes some fans tune out without him realizing he's excluding a huge portion of what made the show great. But again, it's the South Park creators, and they don't really take other people's feedback on board. They like making the episodes they think are funny.
Certain episodes we do that, like, you're either on the train or you're off the train, and if you're off the train, it's gonna really piss you off.
The COVID era. Season 24 is a strange one, as it's not really a season, it's two pandemic specials. This is when COVID hit and South Park Studios had to shut production on episodes due to the stay-at-home restrictions and couldn't work from their offices based in Santa Monica. They realized there's no way they can produce a whole new season from home, but what they could do is make a special, an hour-long episode, which actually took them 12 weeks to make instead of 6 days, due to navigating how to make the episode from home. This was the beginning of South Park's trajectory to longer form content, rather than episodic format. And I'm guessing while testing the waters with this, it's what made them think this is what we want to do with future seasons moving forward. What the future means for South Park. Since 2021, South Park is obliged to make 14 TV movies and 6 episode seasons, which will air in February each year and the specials airing later in the year. This contract puts a lot less pressure on them to churn out whole 10 episode seasons in 10 weeks, and they've been doing this for over 26 years now, so making shorter seasons seems like a fair deal when I take that into consideration. I think some fans don't realise how intensive the South Park writers actually work. Trey Parker has to write a 40-page script each week, then the team need to get an episode animated and produced in 6 days. If they don't want to budge on changing the formula of how they make the show, I can understand why they need to start slowing down. Both Trey and Matt are in their 50s now, and honestly, it's hugely impressive they managed to keep this momentum going for so long. I think it would be easier to point the finger and say 6 episodes isn't good enough if they had a much longer time frame of producing an episode, but it's 6 days. This is the way Trey Parker chooses to work. It means he can't second guess himself or try to perfect each episode. And there's the added pressure on the fact he has to get out an episode. They could easily retire the show or hand it over to someone else like Matt Groening or Seth MacFarlane, as have a massive fortune now from the South Park IP, but they have found a way to still make the show they love in a way which is doable. 6 episodes isn't much, but it's better than no South Park, and you still get the specials later in the year. And I really do think we were at many points during the show's run these last 10 years with them seriously considering is it time to pack up the show. So I'd rather have them actually tell the stories they want to tell instead of filler. But I hope these new season orders of 6 episodes are not a contract obligation and they actually have a real desire to make them. I want them to be making the show for the right reasons because they still enjoy it. As I can't lie, the previous special was less than desirable and seemed like it was rushed and didn't have much thought. Now, we may have a difference of opinion here, but the way I see things is that the Streaming Wars was not a strong enough story to be 2 hours long, relying on bringing back characters that no one really cared about, such as PP, and having a whole subplot involving P and tons of gags centered on Matt Damon. I didn't think Fortune Favors the Brave was funny the first time, and I think they've given Matt Damon enough of a beating with Team America. I still hear people quote that to this day, and the film came out in 2004, just give the guy a break. Back to the Streaming Wars, I struggled to sit through that episode as 1, it was disgusting, and 2, it just didn't connect well as an episode in my opinion. It seemed like Trey didn't want to be sitting in an office writing and just tried to churn out this episode as quickly as possible so he could enjoy the summer and just relied on repetitive P jokes to fuel the narrative. It may have not been the smartest move for them to decide to make these specials during the summer, when this used to be their time off from work and may be tricky adjusting to. It's a shame this story didn't work well, as I thought the first part was actually pretty funny, with Cartman needing fake tits. Who's gonna tell me he already has tits? Being said, even though I didn't enjoy the Streaming Wars, maybe the next specials will be better. I think post-COVID had some very memorable moments. I wouldn't even be surprised if this was originally planned as the show's final episode, with changes made to make it connect to previous episodes. I believe they had this idea on the back burner for a while, as it just flowed a little too well compared to the Streaming Wars, as it really does feel like a final episode. You have to wonder now what South Park's final episode will be, as we know the end to all the characters' story now. Though this isn't public knowledge that the show is nearing its end, there's just little clues in the run that show maybe they don't want to overstay their welcome, especially with the declining viewership, with the show averaging 0.65 million viewers for each episode, as if you compare that with the series high in season 10, which was averaging 3 million. But we've still got new South Park for 3 more years, meaning 18 more episodes total if excluding the specials. Now I know that doesn't sound a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, if you look at how many episodes South Park has created, you will have a huge library to look back on once it ends. Other than some shows where fans just have to settle with 2 seasons, we have 30, giving a total of 343 episodes. Maybe give the Firefly fans a tissue when done crying. And personally, I can't see them going beyond season 30. 30 is a nice round number, and I think by that time Matt and Trey would have told all the stories they want to tell. But we still got some episodes still in the tank and a brand new game on the way. Sure, it's not the 14 episode order we once had, but it's still better than no South Park. And I think instead of complaining it's 6 episodes, maybe hold on to these episodes, appreciating them before the show is gone. If not, maybe you have more in common with this book than you thought. Where? But what are your thoughts? Let me know down below. Consider subscribing if enjoying the content. Thanks for watching.